And in a moment, we have a video of our bell being bell.
So sorry.
Oh, okay. Breathe in, breathe out. Okay. Yay. Thank you, Rose. And over to Jen for some words of welcome.
Well, you always know it's spring when my wife comes and cleans the gardens here at church and plants the tulip bulbs. So it is spring officially, because she did that this week. Welcome to our beloved sanctuary as well as our digital sanctuary on Zoom. Many thanks to Meredith St. John, who is operating the camera today. We are still fine-tuning our new audio-visual setup, as you can see. And so we hope you'll join us in a spirit of grace and good humor as we hit any snags. Those of you who are here in person, we ask that you keep your mask on at all times while indoors, though worship leaders may take off their masks at the mic when distanced from others. As we begin our service today, we want to acknowledge that our church was built on ancestral, unceded land of the Massachusetts people. We acknowledge the devastating legacy of settlers, colonialism, and the continuing harm done to the indigenous groups in our communities and beyond. May our commitment to justice, equality, and compassion call us to take meaningful, restorative action to honor and protect the land and all her people. We come today to recognize again and celebrate the gift of life for ourselves and for all the creatures with whom we share this planet. For the miracle of every breath, with wonder in our joys and compassion in our sorrows. At the close of today's service, we'll have a time to share joys and sorrows. We invite all of you to bring your perspectives, your beliefs, and your doubts, and that is unique and wondrous about you, to our service. In the spirit of love, all are welcome here. Now, if you're new to Theodore Parker Church or are visiting today, we'd love to stay in touch. You're invited to fill out the connection card in the pew or online, which gives you the opportunity to sign up for our weekly updates, newsletter, and help us welcome you. A link to the connection card will be in the chat box on Zoom, as well as our contact information. Those joining us here in the sanctuary, we encourage you to give your contact information to the ushers in the little yellow card that you see in the pew box there to stay in touch. An accessibility note for those joining us via Zoom. We are using Zoom's auto transcription feature to offer live captions as the subtitles throughout today's service. Now, while not perfect, we hope they'll make the service more accessible. Please see the chat for more details. We hope that each of you will find some comfort to carry with you over the week and some challenge for your thoughts. As always, we wish for each of you health, well-being, and a sense of peace. As Yokiko brings us into worship with Ellis Scatt's The Little Lamb from Portrait in Jazz by Valerie Capers, we bid you welcome.
Thank you so much, Yukiko. That's fun. And so fun to be together. Good morning. I'm so glad to see those of you who are here and those of you who are on Zoom. From what I can see from my glasses fogging up, it's so good to be together. Our theme this month, throughout the month of March, is what does it mean to be a people of renewing faith? And today we're exploring what that means for those of us whose faith might not include God and what prayer might look like. So in that spirit, I'd love to share one of my favorite poems by one of my favorite poets, John O'Donohue. He was an Irish mystic, a former priest and poet. And so this is also, to some extent, in belated honor of St. Patrick's Day. This poem is called Beannacht, means a blessing. And it's a great example of a prayer that doesn't ever use the word God. There's one Irish Gaelic word in the poem, a corach, which the poet translates as a canoe. So here's Beannacht. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken in you a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach of thought and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of light be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. Our opening hymn this morning is For the Beauty of the Earth. Folliot S. Pierpont wrote its lyrics in 1864 when he was just 29 years old. Pierpont was captivated by the beauty of the countryside that surrounded him, and he was eager to express gratitude for every aspect of creation. And I am delighted to say that our expression of gratitude this morning can be more vocal than it's been in quite a while. The Planning Ahead COVID response team met on Thursday night and notified the standing committee. We've been given the go-ahead from that team to sing with our masks on. As long as, yeah, I'm excited about that. So do please keep your masks on. Make sure you all are doing a great job of distancing. So perfect. We've got windows open here. So I invite you to sing, add the harmonies that you've been practicing at home as you sang along on Zoom, or just do what you need to do in order to be fully present today. So let's join in that song of gratitude as we sing For the Beauty of the Earth. You're invited to rise in body or spirit if you'd like.
For the beauty of the earth, for the splendor of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of ear and eye, for the heart and mind's delight, for the mystic harmony, linking sense to sound and sight. Source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the wonder of each hour, of the day and of the night, Field and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human care, sister, brother, parent, child, for the kinship we all share, for all gentle thoughts and mild, source of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise.
Amen. You may be seated, and I invite forward Nancy and Stanzi. We light our flaming chalice each week, that chalice that is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism with shared words of covenant. You're invited to say them along with us as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary. Nancy Wilbur will lead us in the English words, and Stanzi Royden will lead us in their Spanish translation, which we say in honor of our sister community in Plazuelas, El Salvador. The words will be in the chat and on the screen.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace,
to
seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
El amor,
El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es nuestra oración. Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Thank you. I invite Rose Gologli up to share with us a story for all ages.
Thank you so much. I have a particularly special story to share with you all this morning. Actually, it's not quite a story, but it is a prayer, as we're exploring this morning, a prayer that is, I think, in particular, a to whom it may concern prayer. I'm going to be sharing an excerpt from a book called Help Me Do the Thing by artist Hannah Burr. Each page offers a short poem, meditation, or plea to a something. Each something, as you'll see in a moment when I bring the pictures up, is a colorful scrap from the artist's studio, allowing us to expand ever further our conception of who or what we may be praying to, if anything at all. Here are some excerpts from Help Me Do the Thing. Hello. I feel like a potato. I'm in a garbage mind. Help. I'm not sure about you. Please reacquaint me with this actual living moment. How may I treat myself like I might treat a baby tiger or a mango-sized bunny? Help me to let go of this. Are you still here? What about now? Help me to sleep and dream in peace, to awaken in peace. I want to feel you in my marrow, my gut, the soles of my feet, the clothes against my skin. Show me how to take care of myself in this situation. What's something small I can do? May I welcome and enjoy this messiness? It's kind of funny, isn't it? May I move over and make room for this, and this, the awkwardness too, and even may I say yes to all of it. With that, I invite Michael to lead us in our children's benediction, for you shall go out.
Yeah,
I think that's
the
what it's
one.
called. Thank you. And I'll lead the children into the sanctuary for the parish hall for Children's Chapel. Thank you.
For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy, and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed be.
Thank you. I welcome up Gretchen Dietz and Suzanne Missert to give us an update about our stewardship campaign, joining together on the journey, and to share a testimonial.
So we are about halfway through our pledge drive journey. We're doing very well so far with 2/3 of our goal reached already. And we have 36 stars guiding our way, which is great. The message today is that we need more stars, and stars, pledges can be in all amounts. We need pledges in all amounts to reach our goal of 84. That's an important goal, as well as the dollar goal. In order to stay on track, we're hoping to reach both our goals by April 1st. We have tons of information on the website, tparkerchurch.org. You can easily find it by looking at the nav bar at the top of the homepage. And we have printed pledge packets on the table over there, and pledge cards for people who still prefer to make their pledge on paper rather than on the online form. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Suzanne Missert, one of our longer-term members who's been an amazing asset to our community. She's going to inspire you to open your wallets and your hearts and help us along on our journey.
Thank you, Gretchen. It's been a minute since I've stood up here, huh? It's really fun. So hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Missert, and I've been coming to the church for over 20 years. Here's a picture of me and my son, Sam, around the time when I first started coming. And next to it is a picture of me and Sam now. So 20 years, it's a long time. For Sam, it's a lifetime. When I was first asked to give a testimonial, I was so excited. I was going to say lots of humorous things, like how I haven't been able to speak for 7 or 8 years, been asked to speak for 7 or 8 years, possibly because I failed to raise enough money last time. So I'm very motivated this time. But then something happened at work that was quite upsetting. I work in a public school system where teachers are struggling to manage students' behavior. Recently, an administrator sent an email to staff referencing urban families and how these parents don't prioritize education, walk around saying the F word, and probably never provide breakfast for their children. I, like many, were appalled. We know that urban is coded language for people of color who may be economically disadvantaged. I immediately began organizing the counselors in the district to write a letter to the superintendent denouncing these toxic, erroneous ideas. And while every person I spoke with agreed with my sentiments, they began dropping out one by one when it came time to commit to taking action. I felt so defeated and distraught and didn't know what to do next. Sunday morning came, and I listened as guest preacher Matt Meyer spoke to us about how taking action and speaking up are the tenets of our religion, and how when things are difficult, that's okay, that we will continue to keep trying because that's who we are as Unitarian Universalists. I hadn't even connected that my need to speak up was part of my religion, part of our religion, and a hallmark of the great Theodore Parker and this church. Last Sunday's service invigorated me, and I've been consulting with the Teachers Union on next steps to address that email. I'm so thankful that I clicked on the church's Zoom link last week. I give to this church because it reminds me of who I am, and it gives me a blood transfusion when I need help to carry on. I give because of the love and friendship that you all have shown to me, and as well as to my often sweet son, Sam. I spent over a third of my life here. This quirky, passionate, dedicated congregation has helped shape who I am today, and I thank you. I hope you also value your connection to this church and its congregation and give as generously as you are able. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And thank you all for your generosity of spirit and of wallet. Our centering hymn today is one that I grew up singing as a song, Eli, Eli. It's written by Hannah Senesh, who was a poet and a paratrooper. It's an interesting combo. Hannah Senesh was one of the 37 Jewish parachutists living in the Palestinian Mandate, parachuted in by the British Army into Yugoslavia during the Second World War to assist in the rescue of Hungarian Jews about to be deported to a death camp. Senesh parachuted in, but was arrested at the Hungarian border, then imprisoned and even tortured, but refused to reveal the details of her mission. She was eventually tried and executed. She is regarded as a national heroine in Israel, where her poetry is widely known. And this particular poem of hers, Eli, Eli, expresses such a yearning for that which is timeless and constant. And it gives me a feeling of grounding in the face of hardship and turmoil. Her poem was set to music by David Zahavi. So we'll sing it through twice, first in Hebrew. Feel free to do your best or just listen, either is fine. And then in English. The English translation on the slides is very slightly different from our hymnals. If you want to follow in the hymnal because you want to read the music, it's number 1044. If you're happy with lyrics, that will be up on the screen in just a second. I invite you to rise in body and in spirit to sing. And I invite you to join me now in a time of prayer or meditation, first in words, then in about 30 seconds of silence, and then in melody. Our words of prayer today are adapted from Unitarian Universalist minister Elizabeth Tarbox. Spirit of life, we give thanks for the opportunities to love that present themselves in the turmoil of life. Where the light catches the tears in another's eyes, where hands are held and there are moments without words, let us be present then and alive to the possibility of changing. Let us seek to make one another's well-being the object of our concern. Let us seek to be present to another's pain, to bathe another's wounds, hear another's sadness, celebrate another's success, and allow the other person's story to change our own. Let us rest in the moment on damp grass, hear the syllables of bird song, and fill up on the sweet air that rolls over oceans and continents. Let us look up at the stars and the planets that fill the night sky with majesty. Let us witness the first fresh buds of spring amid the brown sticks of winter. And for all this, let us be grateful. Let us not defend ourselves against the discomfort of unruly emotion, nor seek to close down our hearts for fear that a new love will come to shake our foundations. Let us instead be open to discovering a new way of seeing an old problem, or appreciating the perfection of a seashell, or the possibility of a friendship. For in giving ourselves to what we do not understand, we receive life's blessings. And in taking care of another, we are cared for. Let us be together in sacred silence.
And now a call for offering. Generosity is a spiritual practice of our Unitarian Universalist congregations. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and in sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. Links to donate will be in the chat, or you can take a meditative moment writing out a check and sending it to the church after the service. Ushers will come around now, around the sanctuary to collect offering from those in the pews who wish to donate something more tangible. As Yukiko shares with us the Waltz for Miles by Valerie Capers, an offering to sustain this congregation of memory and hope be gratefully received. Thank you.
Thank you, Yukiko. Our reading this morning, which Jen and I will share responsively, is called To Worship by Reverend Jacob Trapp.
To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand.
To worship is to be silent, receptive, before a tree astir with the wind or the passing shadow of a cloud.
To worship is to work with dedication and with skill. It is to pause from work and to listen to a strain of music.
To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the still, small voice within.
Worship is a loneliness seeking communion. It is a thirsty land crying out for rain.
Worship is kindred fire within our hearts. It moves through deeds of kindness and through acts of love.
Worship is the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond.
It is an inarticulate silence, yearning to speak. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky of the eternal. I've been thinking a lot recently about prayer. And also I've been praying a lot without stopping to analyze it. In a time like this, where there are so many people in our lives, in our communities, in our world who are suffering and fearful, praying for others feels like something to do, even if we're not intellectually sure that it does anything. Prayer is not always the most comfortable concept for Unitarian Universalists, especially for those of us who are humanist, agnostic, or atheist. So I want to invite us into a deep dive into prayer to see if we can't find a way in. First off, a story from several years ago that I still think about often. The door was closed, but I knocked anyway. This was a hospital room on one of the cardiac floors where I served as a chaplaincy intern for the summer. The roster that I held in my hands gave me the patient's name, age, and religious affiliation, but nothing really else. The patient hadn't requested a chaplain, but I was assigned to this floor to offer companionships to all of the patients, so I knocked. I heard a deep voice from inside call out a muffled, "Come in." So I went in. "Hi," I said. "My name is Joanna. I'm one of the chaplains here. And it's one of my joys to get to stop by and visit with the patients on this floor. How are you doing?" The man inside was perhaps in his 60s, and I'll call him George. He introduced me to the two middle-aged women in the room with us as his daughters. George was cheerful, but he looked a little guilty as he said, "You know, I was raised Catholic, but I haven't believed in God for a long time, and religion just isn't important to me." "Oh, I'm sorry, no offense." "Hey," I responded, you really don't need to apologize to me. Tell me about what is important to you." "His family," George responded. He was there in the hospital for a relatively minor procedure on his heart, but it was one that still had risks, and one that might force him to change some of his day-to-day life. George told me that he wasn't afraid of dying, but he was worried that he wouldn't be able to keep up with his grandkids anymore. I said it sounded like while he wasn't afraid of losing his life in this procedure, he was afraid of losing the life he knew. What would it mean for him if he wasn't able to play with his grandkids in the same way that he had before his procedure? He responded, "I'm afraid it would mean I'd become an old fuddy-duddy, someone who wasn't fun to be around anymore, and I'm afraid they wouldn't want to keep hanging out with this old man." "Oh, Pops," one of his daughters said, "the kids are going to love you no matter what." There was silence for a few moments, and then George said quietly, "You know, what I'm really afraid of losing is being able to run. I feel selfish saying it, but it's true. Running is like my church. I run every day, no matter what, and it's when I feel most at peace. I'm signed up to run this half marathon in a few months, and what if I can't?" We talked for about 20 more minutes. It was a really lovely, moving conversation. As we wrapped up, I said, "So often at the end of visits, I'll offer a prayer for the patient if they want it. It's totally fine if it's not your thing. Shall I offer a prayer today?" I felt uncomfortable asking since George had already said that he wasn't into religion, but my chaplaincy supervisors encouraged us to give people the option. George looked a little uncomfortable too, shifting a little in his bed. Looking aside, he said, "Well, oh, go for it, Dad," his daughter said. "It can't hurt." "Whatever you want, George," I said again. "Okay, sure, a prayer would be nice," he said, still not making eye contact. "You got it," I said. And I took a breath and closed my eyes and paused for a moment and then prayed something like, "Holy One, mysterious source of compassion and healing, be with George as he undergoes this procedure. May his caregiver's hands be skilled and gentle. May he feel the love of his family holding him up like a buoy, and help him to see that they love him for who he is, not for what he's able to do. Grant George patience in his healing and resilience as he adapts to the changes that may come. Guide his feet while he runs this race." And let us say, Amen. When I opened my eyes, I saw George looking deeply into my face with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said, sounding choked up and surprised. "You really saw me. Thank you." This moment has stuck with me in the years since I did that summer chaplaincy internship, not because of anything I think I did exceptionally well as a chaplain. That's what we're all trained to do. But because it was a moment that transformed my relationship with prayer. And because it was a transformative moment of prayer that didn't involve the word God. Here today, there is a beautiful theological diversity amongst us, just like every other room of Unitarian Universalists, from proud theists to avowed atheists and everywhere in between. I think many of us UUs have a complicated relationship at best with prayer because we're rational beings, and our first question about prayer is often, well, to whom are we praying? And I think that gets interesting. Some of us who believe in God might not believe in a personal God who hears and answers prayers. Some of us turn to our rational minds and what our senses can tell us, and prayer may seem irrational or superstitious. Some of us have emotional baggage from carrying around other people's expectations of what prayer is or can be. When I started that summer-long chaplaincy internship, prayer was one of the things that I was most intimidated by. And let me tell you, when you are a chaplain in the hospital, you do a lot of prayer and you do it on the spot. It seemed to me, and this is where I got uncomfortable, that prayer has a lot to do with God. And personally, as a humanist, someone who cares more about how other people treat each other and other beings, I always felt a little uneasy about praying, at least in front of other people. And here I was, going into the rooms of people who sometimes did believe very strongly in God and in God's power to answer prayers, and I was expected to go in there and pray for them. I felt like a little bit of a fraud. But what I experienced in my visit with George was that when it came time for us to pray, God was beside the point. In that moment, the addressee of that prayer didn't matter so much. Instead of starting out my prayer with the nebulous words, Holy One, I really could have started it with to whom it may concern. The point was, prayer was a vehicle for human connection. Prayer allowed me to express my best wishes for Michael. Prayer allowed me to reflect back the things that he'd shared with me in a way that showed I'd heard him. Prayer allowed me to companion him on a journey that was his to take. Prayer can be an incredible spiritual practice and a powerful tool of social connection, regardless of whether we believe in God. UU minister Laurel Hallman is a non-theist who spoke about her experience of learning to pray with her congregation. In her 2003 Berry Street lecture called A Language of Reverence, she remarked that every once in a while someone would ask her who she thinks she's praying to. She would respond that she just recalled the good advice from 12-step programs: just take care of your side of the street. And that's what I do with prayer, Reverend Hallman says. I take care of my side of the street with my gratitude, amazement, praise, fear, anger, and hurt, and the side of the street that my congregation is on. I figure that the other side of the street, God or not God, can take care of itself, and we can save the theological discussions for later. It answers the question of who by saying that the question is not essential to a relational approach to prayer. As part of her developing prayer practice, Reverend Hallman began directing her prayers in congregational worship to God of many names and mystery beyond all naming. Slowly, she began to pray for help and comfort and wisdom and strength. Slowly, she began to name individuals who needed their prayer and with whom they were celebrating. She gave thanks for new babies and grieved over lost loved ones, naming parents and siblings and friends who had died. Slowly, she began to pray about her congregation's feelings of inadequacy to face the pain of their days. Reverend Hallman said that for her, this prayer is not a rational posit to a responding deity. It's not a posture of groveling. It's an expression of our yearning, our grief, and our gratitude. It had become an expression of her congregation as a whole. And prayer can be so many things. Relational, like it was with Michael in that hospital room. It can be a personal, internal way of naming our deepest desires and fears and hopes. Prayer can be a way of letting go of things to which we're clinging tightly. And prayer can be an act of humility, a call to awe and reverence, a reminder to practice gratitude. Another way to approach prayer is to think of liberal Christian writer Anne Lamott's distillation of the three main prayers that humans say. For her, the three are help, thanks, wow. That's prayer at its essence. A congregant I once had suggesting adding a fourth prayer. Oops. I agreed that was wise. I'm convinced, like Reverend Hallman was, that our congregations and the individuals among us need a vocabulary of yearning, one of which is prayer. We need an opportunity to name our relationship with life in relational words, in poetry, in metaphor. I want to circle us back around to that G word, God, because while it's true that one can have a perfectly full and meaningful prayer life without ever mentioning the word God, there's no avoiding the fact that if we're going to be in a time of prayer with other people, odds are the word God is gonna come up. In our beautiful diversity, again, some of us will feel more comfortable than others with praying using the word God or its permutations. For those of us on the less comfortable to downright twitchy end of the God spectrum, I invite us not to shut the door. Let's keep our hearts open as we explore what we could mean when we say God. UU theologian Dr. Rebecca Parker says that the question of whether or not God exists doesn't have to be an intellectual exercise, but rather could be this existential question. Is there reason to trust that there is any help available? The spiritual practice of prayer, then, is an act of trust that help is available. At times, we call that help God. Reverend Kate Braystrup is another one of the writers who offered me inspiration and guidance and comfort as I was studying to be a minister. Reverend Braystrup is a Unitarian Universalist chaplain to the Maine Warden Service, the agency that polices the state's roughly 17 million acres of wild land. She accompanies game wardens to accidents and drownings and on search and rescue operations in the Maine woods. Braystrup writes, "Such a chaplain doesn't have a leisurely hour in which to explain God. The suffering is right there, and its urgency demands an immediate response. We don't give a lot of sermons on the field," she says, "or in the woods or on the streets. Instead, we are called upon to offer the spiritual equivalent of triage. We're asked to pray." In moments of crisis, that urgent sense of yearning or fear or hope can cut right through the mental red tape that we might have put around prayer or God. Sometimes in those moments, we can't do anything but ask for help from the universe, from each other, from something called God. I know the more I listen to the news, the more I have had that feeling recently. But the rest of the time, those more leisurely times where our mind might be free to play with theological puzzles, like many of us, Reverend Braystrup had some issues using the G word, God. In her book on prayer called Beginner's Grace, Reverend Braystrup tells her God story. She writes, "In my youth, I was an agnostic, and then I decided I would go for broke and be an atheist. Later on, when I realized that neither of the A words fit, I still tried to avoid using the word God. It carried so much patriarchal baggage, and the feminist alternative, goddess, sounded to me too much like stewardess or actress, a demeaning diminutive of a real word reserved for men." She eventually came back around to using the word God, because saying the word God out loud always gave her a bracing little jolt of humility. She wrote, "Until I no longer feel that jolt, I shall just have to assume that I've still got ego moles to be whacked. Although I'm glad to report that the moles, like their whacker, seem to be slowing down with age. They pop their grizzled heads up a little less often and with a tad less vigor than they once did." Reverend Braystrup offers a little game to play for those of us who have had issues with the word God. especially if that word only evokes, and I quote, an image of that cranky Caucasian senior citizen lounging around on a cloud, occasionally bestirring himself to hurl a lightning bolt at some unsuspecting sinner. It is extremely difficult, she says, to pray to such an unhelpful deity as this. So here's the game and the invitation. In your own head, fill in the blanks. Nothing matters more than, or the character trait that I value most is. When you've filled in that blank, see what happens when you address your prayers in that way, to the source of that thing. Is that a source from which you can trust that help will come? Beloveds, in the name of that which we hold most dear, let us pray. May we hold each other in love, letting our prayers reflect back that love. May we take care of our side of the street, offering up our deepest yearnings and hopes. May we keep the window open to reverence and awe and gratitude. And our prayer concludes in the way that Reverend Laurel Hallman ends hers. We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all of the helpers of humankind. So may it be, and amen. Our closing hymn today is For All That Is Our Life, a hymn with lyrics by the British Unitarian minister Bruce Findlow. Its music is from Patrick L. Rickey, a composer and pianist from Oakland, California. Let's join now in singing and in expressing our gratitude for all that is our life. I invite you to rise in body, or rise in spirit, and let's sing.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
You may be seated. Following our closing words, our postlude will be A Taste of Bass by Valerie Capers, after which we'll have announcements and a time for socializing. Our closing words today are by Gordon Bucky McKeeman. The worship of the gathered community is now ended. Go in peace, go in joy, go in love to share in the ongoing worship of this community in dispersion. Carry with you what is precious to us all: reverence for all life, beauty that displays itself in love, and deep, abiding peace. So may it be. Thank you to Yukiko and Michael for the music, to Meredith for being on our camera duty today, to Rose for our story for all ages, Abby for assistance with childcare, and Jen for being our service assistant, worship associate, and for all of you for being here. A few brief announcements, which I'll put up on the screen because I know I can't remember things that are just said aloud. So today we hope you'll take a break, go get some lunch, grab some coffee, take a walk while it's nice outside. And we hope you'll join us again today at 2 o'clock, whether in person or online, for our Theodore Parker lecture with Ronel Remy from City Life Vida Urbana. I think it's going to be a really moving, lovely experience. If you haven't RSVP'd yet, I do believe you can still for sure come. Please raise your hand if you're somebody you can talk to about the Theodore Parker lecture. Might just be me. Okay, great. And Allison and me, and then Carrie online or Karen Kirchhoff online. Feel free to ask any questions you have. We'd love to see you and connect with you. And then next Sunday, we invite you, it's another day where you can spend a good chunk of your morning at Theodore Parker Church with the good people here. As the service ends, we'll take like a 5-minute, go grab some water, go use the restroom break, and then reconvene both in Zoom and right here in the sanctuary for a congregational meeting. There's kind of two main things on that agenda, the first of which is to hear more about and approve the renovations for our kitchen over in the parish hall, which is so exciting. The plans look amazing. I can't wait for you to see them, thanks to the hard work of those congregants coordinating that. And I'll be giving an update on behalf of me and the transition team, talking about what we've been up to in this interim ministry process, what the process is, where our progress is, and where we're headed, and give a little bit of an overview of like what happens when we search for a minister, that kind of a thing. So we hope you'll join us. You don't need to be a member to attend, although you do to vote on approving the kitchen renovation funds. So feel free to come and connect and learn. And I believe with that, I will release us into this gorgeous day. Those of you online, if you'd like to stay for breakout rooms, I'll set those up. You'll have about 20 minutes to chat. Those of you in person, feel free to chat outside. It's a gorgeous day. I look forward to greeting you. Go in peace and be blessed.
Be careful.